Hey everybody, welcome back to My Physical World. We're continuing our series of remote sensing using QGIS. The first video we talked about how to download Landsat data and Sentinel data, and I gave you the two places that you go to do that and how to do that, okay? So in this video, we're going to talk about the data that you downloaded and what it is, okay? If you notice on the screen, in the QGIS tutorials directory, I have two files. I have one file in a tar format and I have one in a zip format. Okay, let's concentrate on the tar first. The tar, you notice, starts with an LC. And the good thing to remember, that LC is Landsat, okay? The number after it, the 08. Now, I'm not going to talk about every single number that's in these file names, okay? Just the ones that are useful to you or makes more sense, all right? So the first one, this particular file right here, is the Landsat image that I downloaded, okay? And if you remember, I was focused over Mount St. Helens in the last video, so that's what I downloaded for this tutorial, okay? For both Landsat and Sentinel. Okay, for the Landsat, it always starts with the LC, and then you're going to get whether it's Landsat 9 or 8. So in this case, this is Landsat 8, all right? So we have our Landsat, and we're not going to worry about the next numbers, but you get the row and path here, but you should have that already in when you bring up the catalog. It actually has the words path and then a number and row and a number, okay? Those are superimposed into the file name, okay? And then you have the date stamp. You have the date acquired, okay, when the satellite actually flew overhead, and the date process. Notice that we have a 5-day difference, all right? This is collection 2 try this again. This is collection 2 level 2 data. So it had some post-processing done to it. And it took it 5 days to get that data ready for download. So that's really what that means, okay? And then it's a tar format. We're going to have to extract the data that's in this tar, and I'll show you how to do that here in a bit. Now, this file down here is the Sentinel data, all right? And that's right off the bat, it starts with an S for Sentinel. And then you see the 2 Bravo. Okay, remember I said that Sentinel had a 2 Alpha and a 2 Bravo, all right? It's kind of like, let's say Alpha would be equivalent to Landsat 8, and Bravo would be equivalent to Landsat 9, okay? The first or second satellite in the tandem, all right? So this happens to be Sentinel 2 Bravo, okay? And it's MSI L2 alpha corrected. That means, remember, we have an L1C and a L2A alpha. The L1C is top of the atmosphere post-processed, and the 2 alpha is bottom of the atmosphere post-processed. Okay, if you're doing really land use studies, the 2 alpha is the one that, the L2 alpha is the one that you'd want. So also in this file name, you're going to get some big long strings here. It has the date encoded into it. In this case, June 15th of 2025. And then you have the row and path here, okay? I'm not sure why they use the term, the letter N. I really don't. To be honest with you, I've never researched that. But this is the row and path. Okay, path 511, row 13, and then you have a post-processing date stamp behind it. Okay, time and date. So it was acquired at 1859.19 and post-processed just about 3 hours later. All right, and then it saves it as, it downloads it as a zip file. You're going to see the word safe in it all the time. To be honest with you, I didn't research that either, but I suppose it has something to do with it checking viruses and all that kind of stuff. So the Landsat data, you're going to get the tar if you download the whole package together. You're going to get a tar. With Sentinel data, you're going to get a zip. Okay? And now the next step is going to be unpacking this. But before we unpack it, I don't think I have any icons on this screen. I'm pretty sure I don't. Let me minimize this for a second. I don't. But you can download for free 7-zip. Okay, so go to 7zip.org and download their package. So you have 7-zip. All right, so let's bring this up again. All right, now if you have 7-zip installed, or if you don't if you have a tar extractor, or if you have 7-zip, all you need to do on the tar is to right click it, open that up with 7-zip, and then choose extract files or extract here. If you extract here, all the individual files will be under the directory QGIS tutorials in this particular example. Okay, but I want a little bit more control over that. So I'm going to extract the files, and then over here you get this dialog, and it says download in this directory. Now what will happen is if you do it down, if you extract files, it will create a folder with the same name as the tar. Okay, and if you hit OK, you're gonna get a confirmation. So that's what I'm getting here. Is I'm going to just say yes to all. Notice that it created a folder with the same name as the tar file. Now all the Landsat imagery is inside this folder. Okay, and then if you don't want the tar anymore, you can go ahead and delete it. All right. Now with the zip file is the Sentinel data. I'm going to right click it, go to 7-zip, and extract here. And it doesn't give you a confirmation. It just does the unzip. So now I have two folders, one for the Landsat and one for the Sentinel. Okay, and you can rename these folders to anything that you want to make more sense to you. But now we have everything that we need to have in order to start bringing it into QGIS. But let's examine them a little bit. So let's go to the Landsat first. I'm going to double click the Landsat folder. Wait for it to catch up. And right off the bat, inside that folder, all you see is a bunch of geotiffs and some other files. Okay, I'm not going to explain every file that's in here, but the ones that you might want to concentrate are anything that has ending with a B, some number, and TIFF. Okay, the B stands for band, and then the number obviously is the band number, and then it's a geotiff image. Okay, so we have quite a few of those. But for this tutorial, we're just going to be concentrating on bands where's one? Right here, band 1 through 7. And we might bring in band 10, okay? Where is band 10? It's in here somewhere. Oh, here it is, right here. Okay, band 10 is a thermal layer, okay? So you have 7 bands plus your thermals, all right? We won't talk about these other TIFF images. We'll cover those in a different video, but I'm just wanting to get data into your QGIS. All right, so that's all there is to the Landsat data. So let's go back to QGIS tutorials and let's open up the Sentinel. So Sentinel, you're going to get a whole bunch. Remember when we were at the Sentinel site, there was where we saw the single files downloads. It gave you that directory tree. Well, here's that directory tree now on your computer. And so inside of these is different information. But for this tutorial series, we're only talking about the actual bringing in the images. Okay, we're not correcting, we're not doing reflectance, we're not doing NDVIs or anything like that. We just want to bring the image into QGIS. So inside of your Sentinel folder, there is going to be a folder called Granule. Okay, so double click that, and then you're going to see this other name, which is almost, it's almost the same as your zip file name, except it leaves off the Sentinel data in the front, and you just have the L2 alpha. Okay, but you double click and go into that folder, and then you have some more folders. You got an auxiliary folder, you got an IMG folder, and you got a QI folder, and then you have this metal file. Okay, but we're not talking about anything. You want to go into the image folder, which is the IMG data. And then there's more folders inside of there. Okay, here are your images. This is the data that you're actually looking for. If you remember in the last video, I talked about the resolution of the data. So there's some bands that can have 10 meter data. There's other bands that can do 20 meter data, 20 meter resolution. And then there's some bands that are 60 meter resolution. So depending on what you want to do, in our case, we're going to use the 20 meter because it has more bands in there and it's more equivalent to the Landsat stuff, because Landsat's 30 meter. But let's take a look inside each one of these. So inside the 10 meter resolution, you see that you have top of the atmosphere, and then you also have bands 2, 3, 4, and 8. Okay, those bands are 10 meter resolution. So if you wanted a good satellite visible light spectrum image of a geography, you can use the 10 meter resolutions for band 2, 3, 4, and 8. Okay, 8 is infrared, 4 is red, 3 is green, 2 is blue. Okay, so if you wanted 10 meter resolution stuff. Let's go back up here to the image directory, go into 20 meter resolution. In 20 meter resolution, almost all the bands are 20 meter resolution, with the exception of they have an 8A instead of band 8. It has a different wavelength of IR than 8. Okay, 8A is slightly different than 8. All right, but they also have some atmosphere bands 10 and 12. I mean 11 and 12. They don't have band 10. Okay, All right, let's go back up and look at the 60 meter resolution. And the 60 meter resolution has the same bands, except they have a band 9. All right. Now, if you're interested in the bands themselves, we'll talk about that in another video on what are the bands in Landsat and what are the bands in Sentinel. Okay. This particular episode is just getting these into QGIS, and then you can go from there. All right. So we have three places in Sentinel to get some images out, and we have one place in Landsat to get your images out. Let's concentrate first on the Landsat. Okay, so I have this directory, and inside that directory I have a bunch of geotiffs that we are going to bring into QGIS. All right, so I'm going to minimize that and bring up QGIS. And this is for Landsat. Okay, so here's an open brand new project. You can name it, do whatever you want, but we're going to bring in raster data. Okay, satellite data is raster. All right, we're going to come up to the open data source. We're going to click the open data source, and it brings up this menu, this dialog, and you're going to select raster. If it comes up and it's on vector, just drop down to raster. Now we want to select the files that we want to bring in. This is Landsat. So what we want to do for the Landsat data first is we're going to come over here to the three dots, and we are going to, I think I'm already there, almost. Let's go back to where you will be when it first comes up. All right, you're going to navigate to your, in this case, oh no, I wasn't in that directory, GIS, and then I had, let's see, back one. Okay, so I have QGIS tutorials. That's where we put those. That's where we put our downloads. We're going to do the Landsat first. So I'm going to double click inside the folder for the Landsat. And I'm simply just going to pick bands 1 through 7. I'm not going to worry about 10 right now. Okay. So we're looking for anything that ends with B1 through B7, which is right down here. Okay, so all I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight the first one, come down to band 7, holding my shift, and so I have bands 1 through 7 selected. Okay, the next step is open, and that builds the list inside this dialog box. Okay, so now we have bands 1 through 7 for Landsat selected. And we are going to come down here to the add button and add those to our project. And then you can close the open source dialog. So now over on this left side, let me kind of bring this up a little bit. I don't need that tree in my face. All right, so it brings up each individual band. Okay, each one of these is a separate file. Okay, each band is a separate file. But we want to get all of these bands in one file, one stacked file that treats each band as its own entity. That way you can map each band to whatever visible light range you want that particular band to go. Does that make sense? Okay, remember, we have for the human eye, we see red, green, and blue. Okay, maybe I want to take the red visible light, which is band 4, okay? And I want to map that to the red visible light. And then 3 to the green and 2 to the blue. That would give you a version of the image that your human eye would see. Okay, does that make sense? So we need to create a stacked file, basically, that has each individual band in it, that we can assign each band to a particular visible light range. Okay. Now these are brought in showing the grays of the scales of gray in the image. So if I turn on this one, it's just a grayscale image, and each pixel has data in it. All right, but it kind of looks like our geographic area. Here is the Columbia River right here. All right, so I don't want to show this legend like this on each one because it just takes up too much space. So if you hit this collapse button right up here, hit that collapse, and it gets rid of it, just kind of packs everything a little better that you can see them. Now, you do not have to have them on in order to create this new layer stack. You don't have to have them on. You just have to have them in the table of contents. All right, so they need to be loaded into QGIS. Now, what we're going to create, it's a virtual file, okay, a virtual raster file, okay, it has an extension of VRT, okay, and in that VRT, I want to stack all these different bands into one file, okay, and how that's done is you're going to come up here to Raster in the main menu, and you go down to Miscellaneous and build a virtual raster. So click that, and then you get this new dialog box. All right. In the virtual raster, where we're creating this new file, you can have it temporary. That means when you leave QGIS, it's wiped from memory, okay? You'd have to come back in here and recreate it. However, with a stacked file like this, you can literally save all the definitions of making that stacked file out to disk, that it automatically recreates it when you open QGIS in that project. Does that make sense? Okay, it's kind of like, it's not actually saving those bands again, it's just making the call. It knows where to get the information to create that virtual file again. All right, and then why do they call it a virtual file if there's really a file there, right? Okay, so we are building the virtual raster file, okay, and we're actually going to create an actual file. All right, now we need to go get those files that we want to build it upon. Now, before we do this, I know people hate when instructors do this, but I want you to close this window for right now and come over here to the table of contents and look at the order in which these bands are in the table of contents. Okay, if I created a virtual file on how these are in the table of contents, band 1 would be assigned to band 7 that we brought in would be assigned to band 1 in our virtual. Okay, the virtual file, these files have to be in the order in which you want them in the virtual file. Okay, so obviously we're going to take band 7, drop that down in the bottom. We're going to put 6 above it, 5 above 6, 4 above 5, 3 above 4, 2 above 3. Now we have band 1 down, okay, sequentially down. All right, ascending order, okay, from band 1 to band 7, okay. So do that. Then you're going to go back. Now you can go to raster, go to miscellaneous, and go to build virtual raster. Here's that dialog again. Now select these three dots over here. We're going to build our list of what we want in that virtual file. And here we have bands 1 through 7. And I'm going to go ahead and select all. You don't have to. If you don't want all the bands in that virtual file, you can actually create virtual files based off of whatever band combinations that you want. So if I wanted 4, 3, and 2, I would only bring in those visible light ones for a visible light image, right? But I want to be able to bring in some IR if I need it. Okay, so we're going to add all these together. So I'm just going to select all, and they're all check marked. And then I'm going to hit OK, because there's some more things we need. You're not going to do run yet. I want to do OK, because there's a few more things we need to do. So OK. So now 7 inputs are selected. Now, down under here in the resolution, don't bother with it, but come down here where it says place each input file into a separate band. Okay, so I'm going to check mark that, and then I'm going to scroll wheel down to where it says virtual, and where it's, if you just leave this blank and hit run, it will create your stacked file over here in the table of contents. But when you leave QGIS, they'll be gone. Okay, and then when you come back into your project, you'll have to redo all of what we just did. Okay, however, we can create, by hitting these dots over here, we can save it to a file. And I'm going to click Save to File, and then it will go into whatever directory you're currently in. And I'm going to go back one and go in, and I'm going to go back 2 into QGIS tutorials. And I'm going to give this a name, and we're just going to say, normally I would put the date of the image with maybe an LS behind it for Landsat, okay? But in our tutorial, we're only doing 2 images, one Landsat and one Sentinel. So I'm going to call this Landsat. Okay, and it's automatically going to have an extension of VRT. So I'm going to hit save, and that's going to be the name of the file right there, My Physical World, QGIS Tutorials, Landsat Virtual Raster. Okay, now I'm going to hit run, and it doesn't take long. Okay, and then close, and now we have a stacked band image. Okay, so bands 1 through 7 are now in one file. Okay, now you can select this, the original files we brought in, select the first one, hold shift, select the last one, right click, and you can remove those layers because we don't need them anymore. Okay, unless you had to rebuild it, then you'd have to bring them back in. Okay, but now we have a Landsat image of the Mount St. Helens area, but the bands are kind of weird looking. Okay, now I'm going to double click on Landsat, and over here you're going to see the layers property, and we're symbology. And what this is where we are going to map our band to the visible light spectrum that our human eyes can see. Okay, so if I wanted in Landsat data, bands 4, 3, and 2 are visible light. Okay, so if I want a visible light representation of the Landsat data, I'm going to map the band 4 to the red, band 3 to the green, and band 2 to the blue. Okay, 4, 3, and 2. That's our band combination. All right, make sure it's on multi-band color. For red, we're going to say band 4. For green, we're going to say band 3. And for blue, we're going to say band 2. That's a Landsat band combination for visible light, 432. Okay? Then we're just simply going to apply. And then OK. So this right here is the band combination for visible light. So if I zoom in, we're seeing some clear-cut areas, we're seeing some forest, we're seeing some snow, we're seeing some water. Okay? Now, let's say I was doing some vegetation type of band combination, and I like to use a lot for vegetation bands 7, 5, and 2. 7 and 5 being infrared, and 5 being the shortwave, the near IR, okay? So I'm gonna map band 7 to red, 5 to green, and 2 to blue, okay? Basically not changing blue, changing that one. So I'm going to double click the Landsat, and let's change this to 7, 5, and 2, okay? That's a band combination for doing vegetation studies, and you're going to see it turn bright green and orange. So apply, and we see some other colors, okay? And those other colors mean something, okay? So in Landsat, with this band combination, forests show up really, really well. They're the greens, okay? Your waters are blues to blacks, okay? Darker the blue or black means the clearer the water is. Snow shows up in cyan or cerulean blue, okay? Snow and ice. And bare shows up in share or build up areas such as towns and stuff show up in this orange or magenta, okay? So you can do some studies using this band combination, all right? Now, we brought in Landsat. Now I'm going to show you how to bring in the Sentinel data. Okay, let's collapse that. And we're going to add images to our table of contents. So I'm going to come up here to open source data, go back into the raster. I'm going to hit the 3 dots, except we're going to back out of the Landsat data, and we're going to go into the Sentinel folders. But remember, we have to go further deeper in because there's more file structure. So we're going to go into Granule, and we're going to go into the L2A, L2A, and then we're going to go into the image data, okay? And we're going to go in this case, we're trying to keep it comparable to Landsat, so we're going to go to the 20 meter resolution data. And then I get a list of all the bands, and these are in JPEG format. They're not GeoTIFFs, they're GeoJPEGs, okay? JPEG 2s, okay? And we want bands 1. I'm going to hold down the shift. And I'm not going to do 11 and 12 because 11 and 12 are atmospheric bands. I just want through 8A. So I'm going to hold shift and go to 8A. And then I'm going to open those. And then I'm going to add them to our table of contents by hitting the add. And then I'll close that dialog. Same kind of thing. Okay, now you notice a little shift. It's further to the upper left-hand corner, but it's Mount St. Helens is in the same place, okay, because they're geo-referenced. Now I'm going to collapse these again, and here's our original Landsat. Turn that on. Turn that off. It's kind of in the right place. If you look here, this little stretch of the Columbia River, if I turn on our Landsat, it's pretty much in the same place. Okay, except it's this portion of of the image, okay? If you'll notice, I'm going to zoom out a bit. Landsat, since it's 30 meter resolution, it actually covers more geography than the other one. So yeah, the Landsat image covers more geography than the Sentinel data does, okay? So you might need, if you were doing this entire geographic area, you would have to have more Sentinel data. I think that's pretty obvious. Okay, so let's kind of zoom back into the mountain here, kind of move that over here, and turn the Landsat off. All right, now, remember ordering the bands? Well, let's do it again. So I'm going to take 8A, move it to bottom, 7. So I'm just going to put these in the order that I want them. I've done, you know, this I've done a couple different ways. I've with Landsat, with the Landsat data, I have not reordered them, and when I put them in the virtual, they were correct. Okay, it's weird. But the Sentinel data, I had to reorient them to get them correct. So we might readjust the Landsat ones and bring them in and then have it suck it in. Now, if this was ArcGIS doing this, it would know that B01 was band 1. It would know automatic. ArcGIS Pro knows right off the bat. Okay, so we have our Sentinel data. And there's nothing wrong with QGIS, don't get me wrong. It's free. That makes it even better. All right, so here we have all the bands of Sentinel. Now, remember just how we did it with Landsat. We're going to come up here to Raster, Miscellaneous, and build a virtual raster. And then we're going to come over here to the input layers, hit the 3 dots, and we're only going, you can select all and then deselect the Landsat because we don't want the Landsat one, or you can select them individually. So we have these bands coming in. So I'm going to hit OK, and I'm going to place them into their own bands right here. And then I'm going to come down to the virtual, and we're going to save to file. And since QGIS tutorials was my last folder I was in, it remembers. And so we're going to name this one Sentinel. And it will have an extension of VRT. And so I hit save and then run. And again, it doesn't take long at all. And then I can close that dialog. So now I have the layer stack for my Sentinel, and so I don't need the individual files. So we're going to select those, right click, and remove those layers. Did I where is it? Oh, there it is, right there. Bam. And confirm that. So now I have a Sentinel band, and I have a Sentinel file, and I have a Landsat file. Now, if you want to change the bands for the Sentinel, we're going to double click. Now, the bands for Sentinel, 3, 2, and 1 is visible. And if you don't know this information, you can go to either, you can do a search in Google or whatever engine that you use. You can say band combinations for Sentinel bands or Landsat bands, and it'll tell you what each band is. And you can do band combinations, and it'll tell you the best ways to use those band combinations for whatever you're studying. Okay, so in this case, we're going to go 3, 2, and 1. And then I'm going to hit apply. And that changes the Sentinel data into visible light. Okay. Oh, there. See that right there in Spirit Lake? These are trees floating in the water from the 1980 eruption. Okay, that's what that gray is. These are logs big, gigantic fir trees floating in the water, and they've been floating in Spirit Lake since May 18th. Well, not since May 18th because there wasn't any water in there yet. But after the eruption in 1980, and when this Spirit Lake filled back in with water, these trees started to float, and they've been there ever since. Okay, so that's Mount St. Helens there. Now, you can make a list depending on, like I've always made a cheat sheet, and I've always had my cheat sheets laying around for when you make a virtual file. Like when I was in ArcGIS Pro, I didn't have to have this little cheat sheet of what band is what layer, okay? Because ArcGIS Pro knew right off the bat, whether it was Sentinel data or Landsat data, it knew right off the bat what bands were what, and it corresponded to the layer automatically for you. But QGIS doesn't do that. So I have to have this little cheat sheet for QGIS. Okay, and it really doesn't become a problem until after band 7, because in Sentinel you have an 8 and you have an 8A. Okay, and you can't bring those both in together and have them on the same layer, right? So layer 9 in this list, band 9, okay, 8, that's right, because I didn't bring in those other layers. But if you brought in all the bands into one virtual file, after band 7, you need to map like band 9 actually becomes layer 10. So because you have an 8A. Okay, it's confusing, but sometimes you might have to figure out what you're doing. Okay, so that is how you bring in Landsat and Sentinel data into QGIS. All right, the next video we're going to be talking about different band combinations and what they're useful, okay, for both Sentinel and Landsat. Okay, we're going to be playing more around with these band combinations so you know what they look like and what they do, what they're useful for, because that's where remote sensing really takes off, is combining these bands that tells you useful information about the Earth. Okay, so please subscribe to the channel if you haven't. Hit the notification bell, like, thumbs up or thumbs down, whichever you prefer. I prefer the up, but you may not like my videos, and I understand that, and that's okay. But the really important thing is make comments, start a dialogue in the videos by commenting, because that really helps with the algorithm. Okay, and another, if you want to support me, buymeacoffee.com/myphysicalworld. And if you're interested in my artwork, my oil paintings, ChristopherDO.com. Links are all in the description, and we will see you guys on the next video.